This morning we started off by talking about success and what is it. And I shared with you success is three things. Let's review, okay, for a second. I said success is first of all what? Knowing my purpose in life. Secondly, growing to my maximum potential. And thirdly, sowing seeds that benefit others. We talked about the foundation of leadership, and success is relationships, the ability to get along with people. I shared with you 2 or 3 people principles. I shared with you 2 or 3 people practices. What I have discovered, as well as you have discovered, is the fact, again, to be successful, you've got to be able to get along with people. Now, how many of you raise your hand and say, John, I've got this all covered. I know now that I'm tremendous with my relationship skills. I'm ready to learn the second thing. You ready, huh? You ready? Are you ready to go to the second one, or you want me to stay on relationships a while? You all right? You've got this relationship thing down, correct? Okay. And I know when you get the book, Winning with People and 25 Ways to Win with People, I know that you're not getting it for yourself, but you're getting it for somebody who really needs that book, right? Okay? All right. Makes me feel better. All right. In this session, I would like to talk to you about equipping people. How do you and I train and develop and equip people? Now, here's why this is so important. And by the way, I had people ask me during the break about what are my best equipping books. My best equipping books are books such as The 17 Laws of Teamwork, The 17 Qualities of a Team Player, Developing the Leaders Around You. Those are books that really help you in developing a team. So let's get started. Teamwork makes the dream work. So therefore, when people come to me and they say something like, I have this dream, I would like to accomplish this. Boy, I want to build a company. I want to build my business. I want to help people. Whenever they come up and they begin to talk to me about their dream, I always listen with interest because I want your dreams to come true. I want your dreams to come true, your dreams to come true. But when I ask them and I listen with interest, one of the first questions I ask them when I have an opportunity is, talk to me about the team that you have. Because here's what I've discovered. Let me define a nightmare. A nightmare is a big dream and a bad team. Are you with me? In other words, from a 1 to a 10, if you have a 10 dream and you have about a 2 team, you're in trouble. And I see it happen all the time. Now, here's the way that it should work. Here's the way this should truly work in your life and in my life. In the beginning, the dream is always bigger than the team. It's always better than the team because we get the dream first. Isn't that true? So therefore, there's nothing wrong with having your dream a little bit bigger and a little bit better than your team. Where the problem is if your dream keeps growing, but your team doesn't. So what you've got to do is you've got to ask yourself a very simple question. Does my team match my dream? If from a 1 to a 10, again, as I share with you, I have a 10 dream, but I have about a 2 or 3 team, let me tell you something. Your dream will only be realized based upon the team that you have around you. One of the laws and the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, and I'm kind of interested, would there be some people that have that book? How many of you would have my book? I wrote a book called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. If you have that book, I didn't ask if you read it, okay? I didn't do that. I'm not that bold, okay? But if you have that book, would you raise your hand? Huh? Oh, a lot of you. Whoa, wow, my mother would be proud, okay? Okay. In the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, one of the laws is the law of the inner circle. The law of the inner circle says those who are closest to you determine the level of your success. That's a tremendous law. In other words, if you've got 3 or 4 people that are real close to you, around you in your business, they're going to make you or break you. They're going to bless you or curse you. Those people that are closest to you, they are either your greatest asset or your greatest liability. So your ability to develop a team around you is very important to the success of realizing your dream. Now let me share with you how this has all evolved in the last 3 decades. In the 1980s, in business, the key word was management. Peter Drucker, the great management guru, was writing books on management, and people were saying, I've got to learn how to manage my company. I've got to learn how to manage my business. I've got to learn how to manage myself. And in the 1980s, management was a key word. I had the privilege in the 1980s of having Peter Drucker mentor me. And management was a very important word. But in the 1990s, business people started going from the word management and books on management to books on leadership. And here's why. Management assumes everything will stay the same. Leadership assumes everything will change. They're 2 totally different animals. And in the 80s, when things were more stable, people said, I've got to manage this. I've got to make sure that I have control over it. In the 90s, all of a sudden, they said, my goodness, it's getting out of control. I've got to learn to lead. I've got to get out in front of it. So leadership became the key word of the 1990s, and that's when I kind of got onto the scene and started writing leadership books and helping Fortune 500 companies really get their hands around how do you lead a company. Now, as we've gone into the 21st century, this decade, we've gone from leadership to team leadership. The key word now, I mean, every time almost in the States that I'm asked to co-speak, they would say, John, talk to us about how do you develop a team of leaders? How do you develop a leadership team? And the reason for that is because we now realize that one person cannot lead effectively everything. Let me explain. About 6 years ago, when I wrote the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, for 2 years in the States, I lectured all over the country on that subject, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. What that book did is it helped people understand that if you're going to lead, you've got to be able to do more than just one thing. You see, people used to think that leadership was vision, so they would say, well, if you can cast a vision, you're a good leader. Well, all of a sudden they realized, well, you have to be able to cast a vision, but you have to be able to do 20 other things too. So when I wrote the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, it became very apparent that if you're going to lead effectively, one of the first things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to develop a team of leaders. You're going to have to develop a leadership team. For example, I wrote the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and 5 of the 21 laws I am average or less in. Okay? For example, one of the laws that I'm below average in is the law of navigation. The law of navigation says anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a leader to chart a course. I am not a good navigator. I'm big picture. I don't want to do the day-to-day navigation. I've got people around me that do all the day-to-day stuff, but I don't want to do that. I'm not a very good leader. And so therefore, I have all of my companies in one building in Atlanta, Georgia. And so therefore, when we outgrew our building and we had to go to another building, I stood up in front of all 3 companies. I brought them all together and said, we're going to have to relocate over the next 6 months to another building here in the city. And I said, you know that I'm not good at navigation. I'm not a navigator. So I brought Frank up and I said, Frank will be doing the navigating. And as soon as all the companies realized I wouldn't be doing the navigating, they started to clap and cheer, and they're saying, yay, oh, good. Yeah, wow, thank God, John's not going to lead us here. Woo! We were worried. We figured we'd be in the ditch with him. So I brought Frank up, and I said, now, Frank's going to do the navigating. He's going to do the leading. I'm not going to do the leading. Now, I own the companies. I'm the founder. Doesn't matter. I'm not a good navigator. See, you've got to know what you do well. You've got to know what See, as a leader, you don't get paid to carry the ball. You get paid to know who to give the ball to. And so I said, Frank, I'm going to give you the ball. You're a better navigator. You're a 10 on navigation. I'm a 1. So Frank will be navigating. So I brought Frank up. Everybody clapped. I said, now, Frank, what that means is I'll follow you. See, leaders are not only leaders are also followers. And I said, because he's a better leader than I am in navigation, I said, Frank, I'll follow you. And I said, is there anything you want me to do in helping us in relocation? He said, yes. He said, I have one request. I said, what is it? He said, promise not to come to any of our meetings. And I raised my right hand and said, okay, I promise I won't come to any of your meetings. And everybody cheered. Oh, thank God, he's not coming to the meetings. Okay, we're going to be okay. And I didn't. I didn't do anything. The day we moved into the offices, Frank picked me up in the car, took me to to our new building, and walked me in and said, "This is your office. Thank you very much." Now, why didn't I lead that effort? Because I'm not any good at that area. Now, you see, when I wrote the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, all of a sudden people began to realize you can't do all 21 things well. You're good, but you're not that good. In fact, I was speaking to 200 CEOs of companies in the States. They had this President's Day, and it was just CEOs and me, and I was talking to 200 CEOs, and one of the things I told them is, I said, you need to go back to your people and stand up in front of them and tell them the things you're not good at. And it really bothered them. You could tell there was real emotional pushback. I could tell that they don't like this, And I said, you need to go back and explain your weaknesses to your people. You need to get up in front and say, I'm not any good at this. And so I'm signing books during the break, and this one CEO, he just stands right beside me. I mean, he won't go away. He just stands there, and I'm trying to sign books, and finally I looked at him. I knew he wanted to talk to me. I said, can I help you? He said, yeah, but I got to talk to you private. And so he pulls me over in the corner of the room and kind of whispers to me. He says, what you said in the last session really bothered me. And you said we were supposed to go home and tell people what our weaknesses are, and I don't think you should let people know what your weaknesses are. You got to lead from strength and never let them see you blink and show your strong side, and gave me this kind of pep talk like I never heard any of this stuff, and you know what I mean? I'm listening. Okay. Finally, he's done. I put my arm around him. I said, friend, my name is John. I said, you're operating on a false assumption. He said, what's that? What's the false assumption? What's the false assumption? I said, you're assuming your people don't know your weaknesses. I said, they already know what you don't do well. They talk about it all the time. I said, the reason I ask you to go back and share with them what your weaknesses are so that it would relieve them. It would be like, oh, he knows. Oh, this is very good. We don't have to tell him. We don't have to tell him. So I'm doing this lecture, this series of lectures on the 21 Laws of Leadership throughout the States. And I'm signing books, and I have this kid who just gets his MBA degree. He comes up and he brings the book, and so I'm signing the book, and he's very intense. He says, look at me. I said, okay. He says, I know this is the 21 Laws of Leadership conference. I understand that. But he said, I'm just getting my MBA, and I don't have a lot of time. I thought the kid needs a lesson on perspective. He said, I don't have a lot of time. So he said, listen to me very carefully. And he holds up his index finger. He says, okay, all this stuff. What's the one thing I need to know to be a great leader? And I thought, oh my goodness. So I sucked air and got all my energy and raised my body up to his. And I said, the one thing you need to know to be a great leader is that there's more than one thing you need to know to be a great leader. There's 21 things you need to know to be a great leader. So sit down and shut up and take notes, would you? You see, he was making the mistake that we all make, and that is the fact that we can do it all. We can't do it all. There's not one thing. There's 21 things, and the only way that you're ever going to do this is develop a leadership team. And I'm going to tell you how to develop a leadership team. If the people on the front row, for example, were my leadership team, we would all sit down, and over a period of 21 weeks, each week we would read one law of leadership. We'd read it together. In fact, what I would do is I'd say, you get week 1, you teach week 2, you teach law 3, you teach law 4, and we just sit in a group and we teach the laws, and after we're done teaching the 21 laws of leadership, reading it and teaching it to each other and sitting around a group, then what we would do is we would all personally evaluate ourselves on the 21 laws from a 1 to a 10. So on the law of navigation, I'd say I'm a 1. And after everybody personally, after everybody personally evaluates themselves, then they get up in front of the group and they share their evaluation of themselves to the rest of the group. But the rest of the group, before they do that, evaluates each other too. So therefore, when we go around, for example, if I say I'm a 10 in the law of navigation and the rest of the group says I'm a 2, I've misread myself. Are you with me? So then what I do is everybody knows everybody's number on all the laws. So then what you do is if, for example, if it's a law of navigation, I'm a 1 and Frank's a number 10, then what we do is when we have to navigate something in our company, Frank leads. And I get in the group and I follow and do my best to follow Frank because Frank's the leader. So what we do is this is how you develop team leadership. And as I shared with you earlier, teamwork makes the dream work. Here's the key. As a leader, being successful, you've got to be able to take the vision, the dream, and you've got to be able to take it from me to we. In other words, you've got to get buy-in of the dream. One of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership is the law of buy-in. And the law of buy-in says that people buy into the leader before they buy into the dream or to the vision. And that's very true. So you've got to have buy-in. They've got to buy into you. They've got to buy into the dream. And then you've got to share the load with the leaders. And here's why you have to share the load. This is why you've got to develop teams. This is why you've got to equip people. In the 17 laws of teamwork, one of the laws of teamwork is the law of significance. The law of significance says one is too small of a number to achieve greatness. The law of significance says to you and me that it's impossible on our own, by ourselves, to do something significant. Let me give you this challenge. In the history of mankind, think about it. Name one person without the help of anyone else, by himself or by herself, without anyone else's help, ever achieve something significant for mankind. I was in Joburg, South Africa, speaking to about 10,000 business leaders, and all I was doing all day long is teaching the laws of teamwork. And I looked at these 10,000 people, and I threw out that challenge in Joburg. I said, name one person by himself or by herself, without the help of anyone else, has ever done something significant for mankind. And as soon as I said it, some guy up in that balcony, it's like he was waiting for this question all his life. Some guy in the balcony, the guy said, Charles Lindbergh, he crossed the Atlantic Ocean in a plane all by himself. And I said, well, yeah, he did go across the Atlantic by himself. And everybody clapped and cheered. They thought he got one. But I said, sir, did you know that Ryan Aeronautical Engineering designed and built the plane? That's hope. It's hard to fly across the Atlantic like this. After a while, you just get tired. And I said, sir, did you know that 10 millionaires financed the trip? Any other suggestions? You see, one's too small of a number to achieve greatness. In the States, I don't know if they do this in Malaysia, but in States, when somebody has been successful financially, a lot of times they like to go around and introduce themselves as a self-made man. Do they do this in Malaysia? Yeah, it comes to, hi, I'm a self-made man. And whenever they tell me they're a self-made man, I always look at them and say, oh, I am so sorry. Oh, I hate that. So what do you mean you're sorry? I said, I'm so sorry. Because you see, if you've made everything yourself, you haven't made much. I keep with me this card. It's called The Indispensable Man, and it sums it up for me. It says, sometime when you're feeling important, and sometime when your ego's on bloom, and sometime when you take it for granted that you're the most qualified person in a room. And sometime when you feel that your going would leave an unfillable hole, just follow the simple instruction and see how it humbles your soul. Take a bucket and fill it with water. Put your hand in it up to the wrist. Pull it out, and the hole that's remaining is the measure of how much you'll be missed. You may splash all you please when you enter, and you can stir up the water galore, but stop and you'll find in a moment that it looks quite the same as before. The moral of this quaint example is do the best that you can. Be proud of yourself, but remember, there's no indispensable man. And there isn't. I'm not, and you're not. So if you're going to do something significant, you've got to do it with others. You've got to develop a leadership team. You've got to develop a team around you. Let me explain it this way. In the 17 laws of teamwork, one of the laws of teamwork is the law of Mount Everest. The law of Mount Everest says, as the challenge escalates, the need for teamwork elevates. The law of Mount Everest says that the bigger the challenge you have before you, the better team you need to have around you. So if you've got a big challenge in front of you, you've got to get yourself a good team around you. If you're going to climb Mount Everest, you've got to have a good climbing team. It's the biggest mountain in the world. You just can't climb that by yourself. I mean, how foolish would I be if I looked at you and said, boy, I'm having a great time here in KL today, and you know what I'm going to do? As soon as I'm done speaking today, I'm going to jump on a plane and I'm going to fly to Nepal. And I've always wanted to climb Mount Everest, so I've got my shorts and my sneakers. And I've got a couple days before the weekend, and I just thought I would just kind of run over there and run up on the top of Mount Everest and, plant a flag, you know what I mean, and take a picture and go back down. You say, that's the dumbest man I've ever heard. He can't climb Mount Everest by himself, which I can't. You see, that's like a person with a big dream acting like they don't need people around them. I have something else I want to share with you. I love this. This is the story of a bricklayer who tried to move 500 pounds of bricks from the top of a 4-story building to the sidewalk below. And the problem is he tried to do it all by himself. And what I have here are his own words taken off of his insurance claim form. He said it would have taken too long to carry the bricks down by hand. So I decided to put them in a barrel and lower them by a pulley which I'd fastened to the top of the building. So after tying the rope securely at ground level, I then went up to the top of the building. I fastened the rope around the barrel, loaded it with bricks, and then I swung it out over the sidewalk for the descent. Then I went down to the sidewalk and I untied the rope, holding it securely to guide the barrel down slowly. But since I weigh only 140 pounds, the 500-pound load jerked me from the ground so quick that I didn't have time to think of letting go of the rope. So as I passed between the second and third floor, I met the barrel coming down. And this accounts for the bruises and the lacerations on my upper body. I held tightly to the rope until I reached the top, where my hand became jammed in the pulley. This accounts for my broken thumb. At the same time, however, the barrel hit the sidewalk with a bang, and the bottom fell out. With the weight of the bricks gone, the barrel weighed only 40 pounds. Thus, my 140-pound body began a swift descent, and I met the empty barrel coming up. This accounts for my broken ankle. Slowed only slightly, I continued the descent and landed on the pile of bricks. This accounts for my sprained back and broken collarbone. Now, this next sentence is my favorite in the whole story. At this point, I lost my presence of mind completely. I'd like to debate that one. At this point, he said, I lost my presence of mind completely, and I let go of the rope. And the empty barrel came crashing down on me. This accounts for my head injuries. And as for the last question on your insurance claim form, what would you do if the same situation arose again? Please be advised, I'm finished trying to do the job all by myself. Every time I hear that funny story, I think of people who literally try to do the job all by themselves. So what I want to do is, if we're going to develop a leadership team, we have to know how to develop a leadership team. We have to know how to find and how to develop leaders. Does that make sense? So, let's go. I was doing a major conference in the States, and we were doing a Q&A period of time, and it was a Chick-fil-A. It's a major restaurant company in the States. And one of the managers of one of the restaurants raised his hand, and he said, "John, how do I develop leaders?" And when he asked me the question, how he develops leaders, I said to him, "Find potential leaders." And he sat down, and he thought about it for a moment. He stood right back, and he raised his hand again and said, "Well, how do I find potential leaders?" Because what he realized there was, when he said, "How do you develop leaders?" the greatest way to develop leaders is find potentially good leaders. But the real question is not how do you develop leaders. The question is, how do you find potentially good leaders? If you're going to develop a leadership team, how do you find the right people to put them on the right team? Or as Jim Collins would say, you gotta put the right people on the bus. How do you get the right people on the team? How do you find and attract leaders? Now, let's stop here for a moment, because this is a great question.